Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Cafecito con Colon. Glad you're here with us on this beautiful Monday morning. It is exactly 9 o'clock and we are thrilled you were able to come out. Hope you had a fantastic Juneteenth weekend. It's going to be a great day right here on Cafecito con Colon. We'll get started with Brigadier General Raphael Warren, also known as Raph. We look forward to having him on this morning. We'll put up a few links to get us started, and then we will have General Raphael Warren join us this morning. Glad you're here. Good morning, Donna. Good morning, Jonathan. Good to see you this morning. I'm loving the hearts this morning. Thank you very much. I'm going to get my little cafecito over here. There he is. There is Mr. Brigadier General Sir Raphael Warren. Good morning, Raphael.
Buenos dias, Brian.
Buenos dias, le de Dios. It's a beautiful day. Thanks for joining us this morning. We'll get started here in just a second. You're looking good, sir.
Sí, señor. No trabajando duro.
All right, all right. All right, all right. All right, let's get started here. We've got a great visit scheduled this morning with Raphael Warren, the Brigadier General, retired with a distinguished career behind him and an incredible continued impactful career ahead of him. So we are so thrilled that he was able to join us this morning. He has been a friend for many, many years, and our paths have crossed frequently over the years, and he has always just been as gracious and kind as anybody. And has always given me an opportunity to greet him and to be enriched by coming into his path, because he's always got that $1 million smile that he brings to the table every single. There it is. See right there. There it is. There it is. I knew he brought it this morning as well. So, what we're going to do this morning, General, is we are going to. I'm going to put up a few links, and then we'll get started with our visit. Is that all right?
That is perfect.
All right. So I've known you long enough to be able to say, I when I first met you, you were just Colonel, and then all of a sudden you became the Brigadier General, and I had called you Colonel for so long and tried to get that right, and then I could never get the titles correct. And I guess I want to say that one of the things I always appreciate is that as soon as I got it wrong, you just got this wonderful, gracious look that you gave me, but never made me feel dumb. You just made me feel like I wasn't quite getting it right, and I had to try again. But you always give me a chance to correct my mistakes.
Yeah.
So look, let's get started with some good links. I'm not going to go too deep on links today. I really want to maximize the opportunity we have to spend with Raphael Warren, who is the owner of Spartan Cybersecurity. He is an internationally renowned cybersecurity expert. He's also known as DJ Grandmaster Stinky Fresh. And so he is really multi-talented, and it's quite difficult to book the Brigadier General because he is so in such high demand. And so I really appreciated him making some time for me this morning to come on Cafecito con Colon, which is my extrovert therapy. See, I wouldn't have anybody to talk to during this COVID-19 pandemic if I didn't have Cafecito con Colon. So thank you for being my guest therapist. And then we usually have about 50 therapists join us online every day. And by the end of the day, we get about 1,000 views. So you're going to be a star.
It is my pleasure, Brian. My pleasure. I would, I
Uh,
would hang out with I would hang out with you for any reason.
You're amazing. Thank you. So look, let me, there's this great piece. Good morning, Lynn. I'm glad you are here this morning. And Ralph Pavon, good to see you. Denise, you did such a beautiful job as a guest on our show. Thank you, Denise, for joining us last week. You were awesome. And good morning, Dr. Lawrence Roy Ball. It's great to have you on this morning. Let's see, let me get up some links and then let's get going. So really, one of the great things that some great articles that have been sent to me over the last few weeks, since I have gone to only Black voices on Cafecito con Colon for 3 weeks now, since George Floyd's murder, which happened a little bit longer than 3 weeks ago. One of the great things that I have learned was, dispelling some of the stereotypes and narrative that exist regarding Black lives, Black families, Black men in particular, that are just not supported by the data. And one of those things is about the absentee Black father. If you are uneducated and you simply look at anecdotal data and stories and perceptions and stereotypes and the narrative, one would think that there's a substantial overrepresentation of Black fathers who are not engaged in the lives of their children. Now, that's not to say that you don't have a huge overrepresentation of Black men who are incarcerated who have limited access and opportunity to engage with their children. But this idea of the absent Black father is really troublesome, and it's really not supported by data. But I will tell you that I found this great story on the Optimist Daily regarding this program that Sean Williams started. He I guess was always told, oh, you're a good dad and all this stuff and how exceptional he is. And it's just like, the microaggression when people tell the brigadier general, boy, you're so articulate, or, you've got such a nice smile, as if to say that Black men are not articulate and don't have nice smiles, generally speaking. So that makes him exceptional. It's not to say he's not exceptional, but there are these microaggressions that Black men deal with. But this one here, Sean's always like, oh, you're such a good dad. So he started this thing called the Dad Gang, and to push back on the stereotype of absentee Black fathers. And here's the data I was telling you about. In 2013, a study by the National Center for Health Statistics, Black fathers are far from absence. They are more likely to bathe, dress, and diaper their kids daily, as well as eat daily meals with their children, than their Hispanic or white counterparts. How do you like that, General?
It's great. It sounds great.
Isn't that good stuff? Like we have such an obligation to read and to learn and to listen so that we can know more and be more. And we've talked on this show a lot about knowing better, being better, and doing better, right? And this is a great story. So the next time you hear somebody make some silly comment that plays into the stereotypical story about the role of the Black father in the home, or absentee Black fathers, you tell them about the statistics from the National Center for Health. So there you go. Good morning, Eloisa Tabit. Talk about somebody who poured into me when I was a child. She has always been in my corner. Let's see. Cool stories here in Albuquerque. How about the robots that are going to be cleaning, that clean the Sunport? Over 100,000 square feet at the Sunport are going to be cleaned by this robot. Did you hear about that, Raphael?
I did not hear about it.
Great technology, amazing story from Fetch Robotics, and they keep the place absolutely clean. The robot's name is Breezy One. It's almost as good as your DJ handle, which is DJ Grandmaster Stinky Fresh. We got Robot Breezy One that disinfects the Sunport every single night, over 100,000 square feet. And so check out that little video on KOAT, kind of cute. And let's see here, there are a couple other things that I wanted to put up for you this morning on this beautiful morning. I had a great weekend. I hope each of you did as well. We had lots of Juneteenth celebrations. I think Saturday I spoke a little bit about being up in Gallup for that beautiful, beautiful mural installation on the streets of historic downtown Gallup, where the community came out, Native American community, Hispanic community, Black community, came out united to send this incredible message about disarming racism in their community, disarming racism, and just the alliteration of disarming and racism, kind of powerful. And I sure was glad I was there and be able to provide some remarks, and check out my pictures on my Facebook page about that. Good morning, Noel. Good to see you this morning. And let's see. I am not sure that it meant people lost their jobs at the Sunport. That's a great question. I think this is for the increased disinfecting that has to go on because of COVID-19, is my understanding. So I don't have a great answer for that. But good question, Ms. Olmsted. Let's see here. The other thing I wanted to do was promote. I don't know that I put up many links to Gene Grant's great work on New Mexico in Focus. I wanted to hit that landing page for you. Please check that out. He's had some great coverage of Black Lives Matter's impact on COVID-19, the special session, the Senate adjourned, the House is in session, lots of important things going on in New Mexico's public policy landscape. Here is a link to the Juneteenth virtual celebration that was put on and led by Devontae Watson. What a dynamic young man and beautiful friend of mine, and glad that his event was a success. And also the New Mexico Hospitality Association, talk about a sector that was hit deeply by the COVID-19 pandemic and will take a lot to recover. The New Mexico Hospitality Association has created a New Mexico Safe Promise, and I think you will enjoy reading about that work and join in on that New Mexico Safe Promise. So with that, I am going to leave all my national headlines and New York Times and Washington Post stories. I'm going to just leave those. I'm going to leave them be because I want to get to my incredible guest of honor today, the Brigadier General, the decorated, the trailblazing, the very inspiring and wonderful leader who we are fortunate to have in our community, who decided to be here and stay here after his distinguished career. Raphael Warren is the owner of Spartan Cybersecurity LLC, and he is a retired Brigadier General after 25 years of military and civilian information technology experience and credentials. He has the highest levels of security clearance and is nationally recognized, like I said earlier today, for his incredible work in cybersecurity and the development of cybersecurity teams all over the world. Brigadier General Warren has been intimately involved with the development of a new breed of military cyber warriors. And to that extent, he's been an officer in charge of the Army National Guard cybersecurity unit called the Army National Guard Cyber Shield Cyber Training Program. Brigadier General Warren has also attended training at the prestigious FBI Academy. He has been special assistant to the National Guard Bureau Cyber Division Chief, where he's been instrumental in developing the core skill set of military cyber warriors. And he's been on special assignment to be an observer at different training events and the NGB Army Cyber Division Chief on that chief's behalf. I want to just say that one of the beautiful things about the Brigadier General is that he didn't do his work in a vacuum. The reason our paths cross so frequently over the years is because he has been engaged in our community. I can tell you that I know very little about cybersecurity. I take a lot of pride in having been an honorary commander at the Air Force Base for many years now, and it's not something that I take lightly. I am a graduate of the military civilian program at the Army War College, and I take that very seriously as well. But in terms of me being deeply engaged in the military landscape, I am not. I have those two data points in my life. That's it. The National Security Seminar through the Army War College and the Army or the Kirtland Air Force Base Honorary Guard. But even in spite of me not running in those circles very frequently, I can tell you that Raphael Warren, the Brigadier General, our paths have crossed frequently because he is involved in the community and he has made a difference and he has inspired many people, including myself. But more importantly, he has provided an opportunity for young Black boys and young Black girls to look to a position of high authority and service and see a reflection of themselves. And I think that in our work, there is no higher calling than to inspire the next generation. And I know that Raphael Warren, the Brigadier General, has done that for many, many young people of color. So with that, I just want to say thank you, Raphael Warren, my Brigadier General, retired. Thank you for coming on Cafecito con Colon.
Thank you, Brian. And I would tell you if I had to have a paid press agent, they couldn't do better than that. Thank you so much for
It
your
comes from the heart,
introduction.
my friend.
I appreciate that.
Well, look, I know that many of our guests this morning, this may be the first time they've even heard about the words Brigadier General and be looking at a Black man who's in that leadership role, because I know you are a trailblazer. And so I guess I really want to start out with you telling us a little bit about your story and your journey to get from where you were to where you are, which is being a business owner and a retired Brigadier General. And I know that's a long story, but maybe you could give us a little bit of that story, number one, about your upbringing. Number two, I really want you to help articulate, because I didn't want to make a mistake. I know you were really in that world of firsts. It was a big deal for you to be able to ascend to the position you ascended to in military service. Can you speak to those things a little bit? I know
Sure.
about your mom, that beautiful, what do they call them? Centenarians? What's the
Yeah.
right word? Centenarians?
I
Right?
I only really know one, and that's her.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Your mom is a beautiful 100 years young, and she
Yes.
raised an incredible young man who is a leader, who was driven from the time he was a young boy. And I know a little bit about your story, but tell us from your own
Okay.
words and your perspective about that.
So I was born in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and 1959. So to give you an idea, 60 years old, and it was openly racist. North Carolina was openly racist, and my mom was practiced in trying to teach me how to be in my place and act in my place.
Hmm.
Well, you're somewhat born who you are, and I didn't it didn't work well for me to have a place. My first educational experience was in a segregated school, and then fairly quickly, around the fifth or sixth grade, it was integrated. And I'd done some things that gave me some academic promise early on, and I saw no reason it wouldn't continue. And so she was always very fearful that I could keep up and compete and that sort of thing. And not only was she like overly sensitive about that, I had a great aunt who was her aunt, who was just a brilliant woman in her own right. And I got to, I know she's looking down, my aunt Beck, and she was a polished, elegant lady. So outside area of the what do you call the triad, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, probably the most sophisticated part of North Carolina. They were so sophisticated they insisted upon educating even the black children. So that was interesting in that time.
That's a strong university system right there, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And they had all sorts of programs that they established. One of them was called AT, Academically Talented. And so that was a program where kids showing some academic promise could be accelerated. And I was always in a classroom filled with student teachers because it's a big university town. There's always help. But the funny story was, my mother thought me going into this new school system and the fact that I was in some special program meant that I was somehow behind. She would say, "Just do the best you can, baby," and she would tell me. She never fully understood that, and there was no way for me to, as a kid, to even explain. She just, my kid's in something different, then it must be something wrong with him.
Right.
And,
Right. You were
and
in special education, but she didn't realize it was special in that you were exceeding and excelling above the performance of your peers.
no, and there were things along the way. I got an award for reading the most library books. Now we didn't have a TV, so that wasn't monumental that I got that award.
Your options were limited.
Right, right. You had to be able to present the books that you read and just kind of tell everyone so they know you actually read it. And that was the other thing was, you know, those sort of data points that were there, my mom still didn't see it. But so I went to this new school system. She was just afraid somehow that I just wasn't going to graduate from high school. That was a big deal for her. And then I wanted to be an athlete like most kids. Oddly enough, I always tell people, I had a little promise of playing sports, but no one really came to me other than that school system to see what I could do academically. But I was able to navigate high school, and I went right into the Air Force at 17. Now, I didn't think I had the ability to go straight to college because I didn't understand. I had really good scores, so I didn't understand it since my parents had not done anything with college. I didn't know the value of it. So teachers are telling me, "Hey, you've got great scores. Go apply to university." Well, I just wanted out of there, and since back then, no one really cares when a black kid wanders off. So I wandered off to the Air Force.
Hmm.
And then getting into the Air Force, I was in the helicopter school. And lo and behold, I just got energized. I was an honor graduate out of my helicopter school, and then went to the advanced school, and I was an honor graduate. And then in the Air Force, you have tests for your promotion. So I was able to go from senior airman all the way to staff sergeant. And then I got into an Air Force commissioning program, and that was going well. And I'll never forget meeting one of the counselors at the education center, and I cannot remember his name. He was a wonderful older African American guy, and as a kid from the South, I, my trust level, I wanted to see someone like me to talk to him.
Right.
And the first thing he said, he goes, "You're from North Carolina, Chapel Hill." He goes, "I want you to do something. I want you to take some tests. We'll see where you're at, because I know about that school and that school system." So he had me take a bunch of CLEP tests. Now, I didn't know it was a big deal, but I just rifled right through them to my 2-year degree because I had gotten advanced. So even then, I still didn't fully appreciate what I could do. And the Air Force was great. I spent about 8 years in the helicopter world. I was a non-commissioned officer of the year in Korea, and also non-commissioned officer of the year at Kirtland Air Force Base. And I was looking around for various commission programs. I actually got into a commissioning program in the Air Force at the time when we were just kind of drawing down the military. And that's when I looked at the New Mexico National Guard, and they had their own program, officer candidate schools down in Roswell. And I thought, well, that'll be fun to do. And I don't know what the Army does, but I'm a pretty tough guy. I can do that. And I will tell you, one of the instrumental people in my career was he went on. It was General Baca. General Baca was probably the greatest adjutant general we've ever had. He managed to get
Pretty
from
amazing guy.
New Mexico all the way to the National Guard Bureau.
That's
But he
right.
took personal interest in me. He knew that being the only one who looked like me could be problematic. And he was just always aware of that. And not so much that people picked on me. New Mexico was different. I had some northern New Mexico factions and some southern New Mexico factions. And while I didn't think they were focused racially on me, you just kind of got left out. It was a weird sort of thing that I wasn't really used to, because I was around a fair amount of black people when I grew up. But I
What's
assimilated.
interesting about your life is that you were around that fair amount of black people when you grew up, yet because of your change in geographic settings, sometimes when you speak about escaping the deep scarring of racism in the South.
Yeah,
But then you come to New Mexico, and it's a different kind of really racism,
right.
because being invisible is also certainly a systemic barrier to your success, right? And
Sure.
it may not be as deeply scarring and painful as some of the things you observed and you've heard about in the South, where your mom grew up, and where you started to be raised. But you say that you escaped that deep scarring and came to New Mexico and experienced a different kind of racism.
Yeah. And one of the things I can say about growing up in the South, we ate well. I mean, I was around people who are poor. Yet, if you look at them physically, you could tell they were not missing any meals. So that was a wonderful blessing there that I always ate well. We had old almost shacks for houses, but when you're a kid and you have uh, all outdoors to play and plenty of food, I mean fresh fruits, vegetables. We had pigs, cows. I mean all around. So there was a sort of abundance,
Hmm.
and they say that helps your brain develop when you get nutrition.
Hmm.
So and I remember one anecdotal story about so we ate a lot of seafood and I didn't know about the various seafood markets. And so back then, if you're brave enough, you could just go out in the ocean and catch fish and sell it and make money. No one, if you want to risk your life, the ocean was out, you just go. So I'm sure there's lots of rules now about who can fish and what you catch. But we would go to this market at the end of the day. Now, people who are expert at fish can take a chance on that fish in water where the ice is melting. So they would just pour, you'd pay money and pour big buckets. So I thought seafood was just for poor people. So when I left home, I was embarrassed to eat it. I was embarrassed to eat seafood because all I'd ever known was this where poor people go when they get buckets of seafood. And I didn't know that the rest of the world were paying a lot of money for that stuff.
That's right, especially in landlocked states like New Mexico.
Yeah, so that's one of those, being country poor, and growing up on the coast. But
So
but
then
it,
talk about the change here when you went from that landscape there in North Carolina to New Mexico. You're progressing as a professional. You've got the general adjutant general Baca in your corner, essentially keeping his eye on you, saying, "Look, this could be a problem. Which one of these does not look like the others? Sometimes that becomes a problem." And that was you.
yes,
So, and then you realize that also in New Mexico's National Guard, you've got a lot of geographic loyalty amongst the unit, right? Like,
right,
are they from north of I-40 or south of I-40? And it
yeah.
matters.
And tribal communities and that sort of thing. And I would listen as they called it a tricultural state, and I would want to raise my hand and say, there's more." But he was the guy, and so you have to go to a board and you say why you want to be a part of the guard, you want to be an officer, and he actually said, you've got a great resume. How long do you think before you make general? And I laughed. I just thought he was a bit of a joke. But more than that, so I was just in the guard and I was doing civilian work. I worked at GE Aircraft Engines in the aeronautical world, and I got laid off. And he was the first to call me and says, "Hey, I want you to come up here and work." I mean, that sort of thing, always kind of eerily knowing what I'm up to and caring about what I'm doing was amazing. And so
He had
that
a
was,
big heart. He had a
yeah.
big heart. I mean, he's known for that. I mean, like if he notices you, like you almost always feel his presence.
Absolutely, and really kind of bringing me into to the family. His son Brian Baca was a chief of staff, and I know his daughters, and I guess know Miss Baca and all of them, and it was just wonderful. In fact, more than I actually was accustomed to for support.
Mhm.
Really, I will never forget early on in my Air Force career, we used to have mail call, and you stand and they would call out your name. And it was so embarrassing because I knew I wasn't going to get anything. I didn't have that kind of family, and it would hurt. When you're a bigger guy, you can't be over there, you know, all teary eyed. But I have a soft heart. I always had a soft heart, and I'll always be that way. So it's those times when someone's really supportive. It means a lot.
Right.
So General Baca was great. And then growing up through the Guard, making friends, Gal mentioned Mike Herrera from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he became my buddy, and he's still my buddy today. We go ride quads and do that sort of thing. He's like better than a brother. I mean, I never was close to my siblings, because they're all half, and they were all much older. And over time, I really started to feel like I belonged in New Mexico. I learned to eat chili and those sort of things. It was always surprising when I ate things in New Mexico when I wasn't from here, but I caught on. It's not hard to catch on, and I I got that part down. But the New Mexico National Guard gave me lots of great opportunities, and really didn't have a lot of hiccups until around the rank of major. And that's probably the time that I felt the most alienated
Mm,
because the military, you have your metrics, and so that's supposed to kind of carry the day when they rank order who's next for promotions. But on this particular time, from major to lieutenant colonel, you start to get into the position where there's some jealousy and that sort of thing that can happen, and maybe even some racism. But I'll never forget, they did a rank order, and it's all supposed to be secret, and it was probably 15 or 20, and they had me ranked at the absolute bottom. And I'd never been that guy. It was so painful, so shocking to me and to my system that I just wanted to quit. I just wanted to
mm,
leave. I said, if everyone thinks I'm that bad, now I will tell you what these scores are supposed to be made of. So there's a fitness test, a physical fitness test, and it's an officer expected to make around 240, but the bottom line is 180. Maximum is 300. I always had a 300.
mm.
And the thing that made you an exception as major would be having a master's degree. I had a master's degree. I had a full-on combat tour. I earned the highest order badge was combat action badge, and also the elite units of the military, airborne, air assault, senior air crew. I had the resume, yet they rated me, just a general group of senior officers rated me as the worst. Well, two of us at the bottom. One was a female, only one, and me. And that was so hurtful and so painful. But the board was challenged. The board was challenged, and there were some other things because there were people on the higher levels that had some additional problems. So then I kind of came up mid stack. Well, somewhere down the line, we ended up going to the national board, and where I was promoted above a lot of my peers. And
Mhm.
the Army system just worked for me, and that was the beautiful thing about it.
Did you appeal that ranking or you let it go and then,
There was nothing I could do. It was secret, and I wasn't supposed to know about it. But I
uh,
just found out about it. Like, we're not the best at keeping secrets here in New Mexico. It's one of our things. I remember, one job I had. I don't know if I told you, but I worked as a federal agent for a while with USDA,
uh,
and I worked in northern New Mexico, and they said that it's going to be hard for you to work your leads in northern New Mexico because insular society may not talk to you. Well, once I got up there, I realized that people call you and tell you everything. they they tell you who's messing around with who's stealing chickens, and well, we're the Fed. I mean, that's not so that was I was pretty effective there. And then my career in the National Guard. There's another person I'll mention. He was a former federal judge here, Richard Puglisi,
sure.
and he made a key decision. He says, I'm gonna make you a battalion commander. There have been any other black battalion commanders, and I said, sir, if you do that, I will have both whatever factions will be united around my death. And he
Sure.
said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. So I got my battalion command, which gives you that great opportunity to be a full colonel, and that was fantastic. So even along the way, even through those dark moments, and just kind of sticking with it and having a few friends, and they're still my friends today. The current adjutant general, I can't say enough about him, Ken Nava,
Sure.
brother, and Miguel Aguilar, and those sort of guys that are in command. We all went to our schools together, and we grew up together. In fact, I'll tell you a little story, and it's really to my shame and discredit, but I'll share with you. When he asked me, let me correct that. I still am the assistant adjutant general for State Defense Force. It's
Okay.
the one position that is strictly for the state, appointed by the governor, and I'm still in that position. And hopefully we don't get into enough catastrophe where they really need me. So
All right.
I
All
keep
right.
abreast,
Glad you
and
clarified.
I keep involved.
Good.
And but General Nava called me, asked me was I interested in that position, and I'm a sober sort of guy about things like that. I thought, because he's my friend, I said, I'll be a part of it so you'll have a good um, dossier of people who, and he can say, well, I did interview an African American guy. And that was my thinking. I said, okay, well, then he's my friend and he's a good guy. And the political winds are going to force him to pick someone who's either Anglo-Hispanic, and he can say, look, I interviewed a guy who's African American who's otherwise qualified. So to be qualified, and our new rule set, so when you're a colonel, you're a Senate confirmed military officer, and you technically are eligible to be general, active or whatever. So that was one of his criteria. So that in the old days, it wasn't really like that. You could just select someone that you liked politically and just
Right.
appoint them. And he's made it much more professional. And I told him, I said, honestly, my friend, I was a little shocked that you selected me. I thought this would be just a drill, and you would do. And I really didn't have a problem with that. If the state's mostly Hispanic and Anglo, then having that person represent. And I kind of had my blinders on,
Hmm.
thought that would be an okay decision for him. It, so it happens, internally also. And I'm sure there are lots of black men who don't put themselves out for certain positions and that sort of stuff. And then there's that pressure, the pressure of being watched
Right.
and evaluated, and everything you say or do. Because I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to fail, I'm going to do some wrong things, and it will get magnified.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that because I think that's an important perspective, and I want to kind of focus in on that because I know that having listened now for a few weeks to Black voices that are trusted in my world, and you're amongst those trusted voices for me. I think there's often a sense that Black men and Black women, but Black men in particular, in these conversations I'm having, feel like it is passed down and made very clear by the generation before, your moms, your fathers, that it will be expected that you work twice as hard for half the credit, and that, like you just said, your failures, your missteps will be magnified in a way that is particularly because of your pigmentation, because you are a Black man in a world that is dominated by those who don't look like you. Your errors will be magnified, and you will have to work twice as hard. Have you found that to be true in the systems and power structures that you've been participating in, both in the military and in the private sector? Because you worked at WorldCom, you were in that sector. Like you've had your foot in both worlds, very substantially planted. Those feet have been substantially planted in worlds at high levels.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to get your perspective on that.
Well, it's a lot of pressure, and people may be okay with me being Black until I'm their boss. We're having unpleasant conversations,
Oh my, that's
and they're playing their tapes, and they think, okay, I just knew it. Once I got a Black boss, he was going to be unfair to me because I'm white, and I had a situation where a guy didn't get a promotion, and so in my directorate at IT New Mexico, which I'm very proud of, we had a young lady from Mexico, we had a Hispanic lady from here, we had a Native American lady, probably the only Native American lady we had in IT sector, and there was a position open, and I had one white guy who was interested, great guy, but he didn't have the Hispanic lady and the Mexican lady both had master's degrees. Yet he was shocked that he did not get the position. And I wanted to just try to understand him a little bit better because I thought he might be emblematic. And I was aware that if he feels that way, and he was comfortable in talking to me, what are the other white guys feeling? Because
right.
it was the first delineator would have been just pure academics,
Sure.
and he would not have met the criteria to even get interviewed. If I've got two or three other candidates and they all have the time and credentials and things like that, then just because you've been around the longest, and that was his key thing. Well, I was here the longest,
Right.
and he really thought, and that's the kind of thing where your decisions are scrutinized. The other time was when I hired someone who happened to be Black in a position. He was a lieutenant colonel, and similar thing. He was the only one that had the requisite bachelor's degree, and there were 6 other Hispanic candidates. And the first thing was he chose because he was Black, and none of them. There was just straightforward. Any way you slice and dice it. And as it comes to HR, that cut is usually made. If the position required a bachelor's degree, you don't have one, then you don't make the cut.
Right.
It got so bad that they wanted me to revoke the political pressures wanted me to revoke the position
Wow.
and do it again. And I want to mention another name, Brigadier General Judy Griego, who's an amazing lady, who was my boss and stuck up for me so many times. I owe her a lot for that, and we were kind of in it together. Understand? She, as a Hispanic female brigadier general, didn't always get the respect that she was due.
Right.
And she would say there's some cultural things here in New Mexico where some men will just not, they won't be happy about that.
And she's terrific. I've enjoyed getting to know her. Really, only the last couple of years, which is strange that our paths didn't cross directly. But she's really been a joy every time I've been around her too.
Yes, she's been amazing for me. And normally when you get to be colonel in '06, there's a big ceremony and all that kind of stuff. I didn't get to have one for whatever reason, but she made sure we had a little ceremony in my office. And even then, these little things are still a little bit hurtful because I watched the big promotions in the military, a successful career is lieutenant colonel. And if you make full bird colonel, that's a big deal. And it's usually, celebrated. And I just, for whatever reason, I didn't get to have one of those ceremonies, so it was funny. My mom visited me out here when I was a battalion commander. I was really proud. My mom would always ask me, because I didn't have any stripes, did I make sergeant yet? That's all she could imagine that I could get to. I would try to explain to her. And so we went around the facilities. I had the facilities at the time. We introduced her to people and things like that. And she wanted to know who was my boss. And I said, Mom, all these people are under my
I am the boss, Mom.
Yeah. And she looks at you like I'm making it up. They love you in spite of everything, but they look at you like you're making it up. So
that is awesome. That is awesome. Hey, so tell me, like I said, you have such a unique perspective because not only did you have a distinguished career in the military and continue to hold that position, but also in the private sector, with WorldCom, now cybersecurity, now you've got Spartan Cyber, and you're leading in that sector, and you're in such a, like, you're in rare airspace is what I would actually say. So being in that rare airspace, I'm very interested, and I think our folks that are tuned in live this morning, and that will watch this all day long, somebody in your rare airspace, what has it been like the last month, having watched the murder, the pain that the nation's going through, the inability for some of us to watch all 8 minutes and 46 seconds of George Floyd's life being taken. And then the response as a community to the Black Lives Matter movement, which is so different than it has been over the last 6 to 7 years. What has that been like for somebody like you who's in such rare airspace? I see from the outside looking in how you are treated when you walk into a room. And frankly, you're in a rare airspace for many reasons. One, because of your presence. You walk in with a presence, General, and I say that with affection and admiration. But
yeah, I'm taller. 6'2" is taller in New Mexico than it is in North Carolina.
That's right. And I guess that's part of it, right? 6'2", you've got a posture of a general. You have a smile that is captivating, and a presence and warmth that people, like, we are drawn to you and we gravitate towards you. So like that rare airspace is for so many reasons, not because you're a trailblazer and having been a leader with so many firsts for a Black man, but also in this different kind of status that you hold. I wonder what it has been like to watch people around you respond, and how do you respond?
It is, for me, well, it's painful. I remember when Martin Luther King was assassinated,
Mm.
and I was very young, but I remember in that little church community, my uncles and them getting their shotguns and going to the church to have a meeting and all that sort of stuff and those sort of things. To see this happening now, I am a bit surprised. And I will tell you this, what surprises me. I was late to believe that Barack Obama could get elected. So
Hmm.
I had to recalibrate myself. When did I lose my sense of hope and belief? I knew I liked him. I knew I was drawn to him, but I might have been in that crew of blacks who thought you're just muddying the water. Let's get Hillary in and let's go for it next time. I was probably of that practical African American thought process, and I was wrong.
Mm.
I might have been the ones who would encourage people, maybe not to protest, to have an event with an agenda and discuss it might have been my approach. But I know in my heart it wouldn't work. I am shocked that on the one hand, black people are seen to be dangerous, and I see white groups with actual guns in city centers, just like it's okay, you
We
know.
talked about that last week. I know you don't get to tune in very often to Cafecito con Colon, but we talked about that last week when I couldn't get the image out of my head of those white men with those semi-automatic weapons on their chest on Mountain Avenue. And had those been 4 or 5 black men, would the community, would the leadership, would the power structure would it have allowed them to walk away alive?
I don't think so. The one thing I can say, there is a sort of a paradox when you gain some success as an African American guy and get your advanced degrees. There are lots of open arms in
Mm.
corporate America because the hard work's done. If you got to that far, they assume that you're a safe bet. They can bring you in. They can take credit for it. I remember many years ago reading an article about the Army considering that the rank of '06 full colonel being equivalent to CEO, and how they've done so much better at getting blacks to that rank than had all the progressive companies out there. And then trying to analyze, well, what is it? Well, no one suggests that there's anything that's a gimme in the Army, but it begins with allowing people to have the same opportunity, you dress alike, and to the extent that you're different, it is your rank that makes you different, and that's the group you're in
Right.
versus your color or gender. And we got a long ways to go in the gender equality in the military. I just want to say that I had the chance to be the coordinator and in charge of the sexual assault program for the military and the substance abuse program. And it was stunning how much I had to learn about the systemic uh, problems as far as sexism. So I'm not shocked that there are people who are having to learn systemic problems about racism. I get all of the black questions from my friends, and I welcome it, and I'm excited to just have that dialogue. Trust me enough to say something you think is uncomfortable when you ask me why. Let's take Reverend Al Sharpton back in his flamboyant days,
Back
and
when he was heavy.
yes, yeah, the bigger Sharpton. He was less diplomatic. And people would ask me, and especially when he would say something thoughtless, and they would say, I will bet you, if you ask most other black person if he said something thoughtless or stupid, I would probably agree. But that's not the whole other man. And I see a person whose heart and anger and energy toward it. When you have anger and energy, you say some things that you may wish you hadn't said,
Good
in
point.
those days. And I've done it. But again, being that I've kind of moved on the kind of intellectual playing field, Albuquerque Academy a few years back for Black History Month looked at some African American contributors, and so I was selected as one of them because I had done the hydrogen fuel cell project, the heart hospital work, and then Comcast. So one of my big jobs here was when Comcast um, went from the old technology to the new quaternary amplitude modulation, quadrature phase shift keying technologies. And I met some people, and they needed more computer types. So we were part of building that system out in Albuquerque. So a place that I would not have known of, could have gotten to go. They put my picture up in Albuquerque's Academy library, and that was pretty shocking.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was great.
So other than engaging in some of these conversations where people are calling you to uh, get the picture through the eyes of a Black man, tell us personally, what has it been like to have to process what we've seen since the murder of George Floyd?
Well, I guess that's the operative term, right? I have to process it. I have a privileged life now, and I'm aware of that. And I, like most people, become a little disconnected from my earliest upbringing. I hear the things, the problems, and things that are happening in my community back in North Carolina, and what they think are really big problems. My mother would tell me a long story about a problem. At the end of it, the problem was a few $100. I would say, Mom, you can start out with that. You need a few $100? I'll take care of it. And but she
Right.
was this long story, and to her, these are insurmountable things. And then my cousins, relatives, and all these people, that when they have a problem or they need new tires and that sort of thing, they call me. So I've lived a privileged life, and now um, I have to force myself to be reflective, and it's going to have to happen in my community for those who have made it to pause and be reflective. I'm excited about some of the celebrities that are at least adding their voice to it, but I hope they use their platform to get the opportunity for people who are from that moment. Uh, Dave Chappelle is a controversial person, but I watched his segment called 846, and
Yeah.
he said, his graphic terms about they had their uh, knee on the guy's throat for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and he said some black TV commentator says, "Where are the voices of people?" He goes, "I kept my mouth shut. We need to hear from the streets. I trust the streets. They're gonna tell the truth." And I thought that was amazing. I hadn't thought of it that way. And so while a guy like me gets a moment, gets a platform to talk, I am careful to understand that I may not understand. So when you retire, I retired from federal service and military service, and I have a partial disability. So I have guaranteed checks coming in. I'd like to do wonderful things with my business because I want to be able to put some kid through college and help support their family because of my something that was my brainchild. I love that idea, and I'm going to do that. I want to shout out to Jack Vigil at Harmonics Technology, who we formed a company. And I said, Jack, if they trust me to tell them what's all wrong with their cybersecurity posture, they'll trust me to tell them who will fix it. Because
Right.
I can sit around and pontificate about all the things that you should not do to be cyber secure. But they want someone to hold their hand, buy the right things. There's more snake oil out there than there are actual solutions.
Right.
So that would be my thoughts about how I look at this, knowing that I am privileged and that when I speak, I need to have engaged with someone who's feeling all of that pain so I can share that story. Somebody maybe wants to talk to me because I have prominence, but it would just be to be a conduit for someone who doesn't have my voice.
That's, and I've talked about that for the last few weeks about those trusted voices, and you are a trusted voice. And and during this time of pain and processing, what's the message when people say, uh, uh, General Warren, how am I a better ally? How can I be a better ally? How can I engage at this moment in time when 12 months ago, elected officials like me, community leaders like you, were very careful in the way and I'll just say this because I think not enough of us are saying it, but we were more careful about whether or not we were willing to, just horrible, but whether we're willing to stand up tall and say Black Lives Matter. Because
Yes,
even a
I
year
was slow.
ago, even a year ago, we couldn't figure out the concept that yes, Black Lives Matter, and yes, you can say all lives matter, but all lives won't matter until Black Lives Matter, and that's why we have to focus on that. And
Yes.
so many of us, and this is where it gets uncomfortable for me, and we have these difficult dialogues with people like you, Raph, um, is because I have to be willing to say, yeah, maybe I was a little um, safe and
Yeah.
not saying that. And now all of a sudden it's different. You've got everybody from governors to United States senators to people like me, just a humble and hardworking state auditor, uh, who are now willing to help carry the message because of 8 minutes and 48 seconds of pain.
I agree with you, Brian.
How sad that it took us this long to figure it out. But what do you tell us?
I I'm the same. I'm so practiced at being non-offensive black that I no longer am processing that. Somewhere down the line, um, my speech patterns, my reticence to speak up on certain things, or even to say the word Black Lives Matter. I would not have ever seen myself saying that. I didn't find it offensive. I just thought I might come across as antagonistic and hurtful to the cause, and that's not unreasonable, you know. But I saw Republican Senator Mitt Romney say Black Lives Matter, and I thought, wow. I just said, wow.
Yeah.
And then I started to think to myself, mm, what is safety? What is security? Those old tapes about how do I fit in? And I remember going through. I remember Dress for Success,
Mm-hmm.
and it talked about things like African American avoiding having facial hair and all those things, and that I can't have a mustache because someone might take a point off or whatever. All those things. And now I've come to the conclusion that I don't wear a mustache very well, so I have a better reason not to wear one.
So
But
you're quite aerodynamic. You don't want any resistance on that beautiful
yes,
carra,
yes.
carrabella.
So there is probably a lot of blacks like me that are now uttering the word Black Lives Matter, and I'm not worried about um, ruffling feathers and upsetting someone, especially our white friends who've embraced us and
Mhm.
given us a place in their hearts, genuinely. But I had a friend call me the other day, and they moved away, and they said, I just really wanted to talk to you because we were friends for years and we never had a single uncomfortable conversation. And someone told me, if you've never had an uncomfortable conversation with a
Yeah,
black person, then you haven't kept it real. And I go,
that's exactly right. I have said that every day for the last 3 weeks. Keep going. Keep
I
going.
said, I said it's true. And although you never we never had a situation, um, and I can't think of the times where you said something that I should have said something, but I can assure you, I probably let it go.
Yep.
I'm practiced at letting it go.
Yep.
That was part of how guys my age got somewhere, fitting in, going along, you know.
Go along to
And
get along. Get along to
yeah,
go
yeah,
along. Right?
yeah. And then so we have that conversation. They asked me about some of these things, and I said it bothers me just as much for my friends to always expect me to be superhuman and to be under perfect control all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
have a right to go crazy, and I know all of the curse words. I know them all. I know just as many as the average rapper. But
Well,
but
that's
I
why, that's why they call you DJ Grandmaster Funky Fresh.
that's right. The internationally
Internationally unknown, right?
internationally unknown all over the world for my rapping prowess. But so that was one of those kind of conversation, and I said, well, ask me something that you think you didn't ask, and how did I feel about this or that, and I said, well, that's one of those things where you think of me as superhuman, and I'm not. And there's pressure. I don't want to let you down. I'll fall short. You know, not to say I should just go act out because I'm an American. I can act out, but there's a certain sort of pressure when your friends look at you as something other than human, even if they think it's on the positive side. I worked at GE Aircraft Engines in the aeronautical field, and I worked for a wonderful man who was my engineer mentor, and he would give me awfully easy things to do and make a big deal out of it. And it was a bit embarrassing, and because he was a well senior, he just really wanted me to be successful. And we had to have you gotta let me fail too. You gotta let me do something big enough that I can feel genuine about the credit
Hmm.
for it.
That's
And
interesting.
and that's the kind of conversation that you might almost seem ungrateful.
Hmm.
How do you have a conversation with someone who's saying you're doing a great job? I like what you're doing, and I tell everyone you're doing a great job. And I said, well, some of this I don't think is real. I need to have some tougher things to do. You know,
Wow.
I
I
remember.
I appreciate that. We haven't had many guests say what you just said in terms of what I've been trying to actually emphasize, because I heard it from somewhere else, and I keep bringing it back to the show because I think it, and part of it is my therapy, right? Because I have had, we all think I'm not a racist, and now we
Mhm.
all, thanks to the good doctor at American University, yeah, we talk now about not, it's not enough to say I'm not a racist. We have to be anti-racism, but that we all have black friends and we're all so proud, and that means I must not be a racist. And Tommy McKinney helped raise my son and took look over him while he was in Washington D.C., and I helped raise Tommy and make sure that he got through UNM, and I've mentored him for 20 years, and he's now this big shot in DC. And so, man, I'm not a racist. But after 20 years, I can tell you that I never had an uncomfortable conversation with Tommy about what was his life, what was his lived experience in
Mhm.
those times when he had to push back when I wasn't around, or maybe when I was around and there were microaggressions or maybe overt aggressions against him that I didn't have keen enough radar to sense what was actually happening right before my very eyes as it related to this man who was like 6'3", 6'4", and broader than you. I mean, big, big. I mean, like I've never had that uncomfortable conversation. And now I've had a lot of them and I'm a better man for it.
Yeah.
But I was that guy. I was that guy who had my black friends and had never had an uncomfortable conversation so that I could understand their lived experience.
Absolutely. And growth requires a bit of pain. And we all kind of intrinsically know this, whether you want to work out or get in shape and that sort of stuff. Then you got to put your money where your mouth is. That's why my buddy Jack at Harmonics, his VP is an African American lady, was one of his main salesmen.
He's
And
on today, so be careful what you say.
yeah,
Big Brig is here.
well, and the
He comes
fact that
every just so your head doesn't get too big there, General. Bree is on with me every day, just so you know.
she's amazing, wonderful, talent. And see, that's when you put your money where your mouth is. The guy's running a business. He's making business decisions, and he just incidentally is able to do it and have the diversity. You can. I will say if politicians or leaders put the same amount of effort going into the minority community to look for athletes and look for intellectual talent, they'll find it.
Yep,
It's there.
yep.
With all these statistics about black grades and scores and things like that, there none of it matters. You find that motivated, hardworking person. I don't care where they're at. And I've trained lots of young people in my military career, and I always say, no matter where they come from, you can teach them anything except for young males where babies come from. Is one of the things that I'm still working on teaching them.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I do know
That
that you're
seems to be. I don't have the words.
I know you
You
don't.
know,
We got to work on that. There'll be a script somewhere.
yeah, well, in the military, you have to deal with it.
Please email the script to the Brigadier General. Tell us about your family. I know you have a beautiful bride, and she's wandering around the house there. And
Amazing person, is a retired director of finance for Albuquerque Public Schools. My son, another perfect example. My son had some mental issues early on, and the fact that we had the supportive system, we're able to get him through, get him on the right medication, and do sort of things like that. And I felt so many times that he was at risk of getting shot because he's a
Mm.
big, tough-looking guy. He's a pussycat, but he's a big, tough-looking guy. And my princess is going to be going to UNM law school here shortly. Uh, she's she's she has managed to. She's a financial genius because she got as much money as she could from debt. She went to undergraduate in Spain. She went her master's degree in London, and she's two language strong, and she can converse in French and Spanish and English and all that kind of stuff. And she's so smart. And I tell her I will almost forgive her for ruining my life. She says, she goes, "No, Dad, I'm bringing you joy. You just don't. I know, I don't get it." But yeah. So I have had this privilege and the healing of having my own children to do things with and have fun with and to do all the fun stuff and even for them. And I'll give you an example of my daughter not fully understanding some things about culture. She was a great track runner, and we went out to a big track event in Phoenix. For the first time, she was up against, she was a sprinter, all black field. And my daughter didn't understand some cues. And she goes to talk to the other young girls, and their mothers are very serious about athletics and that sort of stuff. And she's like, "Dad, those girls are mean." No,
Yeah.
they're just very, she interpreted that seriousness. And then other little things that she didn't know. "Where are you guys staying?" "We're staying over here and we have a pool," and all that kind of, and she doesn't know. They may come in a whole carload and stay together. And she's almost like bragging because she didn't know the cultural cues. She'd
Right.
never met um, people from the heart of African American culture, the
Right.
ones who will every nickel to put their kids on the road and to go compete, all to win the scholarship because it's only shot for their kid.
Are you talking about in some ways that she's had that life of privilege?
She's definitely had a life of privilege. She's
Mm.
she's definitely had it. Now she's worked on community things.
Yep.
She was out working for AmeriCorps. That's how
No,
she got her.
I can totally relate. I can totally relate. I mean, Raphael will tell you now, like, and we talk about this one generation of poverty away, or I talk about him being, just one generation out from breaking the cycle of poverty. I
Yeah,
grew up with meeting every single government program to make sure I didn't fall through the cracks,
yeah,
um, and was the first in my family to go to college and break the cycle of poverty. And one generation out, my son doesn't know any of those programs other than
yeah,
hearing me talk about them.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
I-
yeah,
he's a graduate of George Washington University with a biomedical engineering degree.
yeah,
Uh, one generation out from that poverty,
yeah,
and so in so many ways, he's had that life of privilege, living in this house. From the time he was 5 years old, he was a baby when I went to law school. So from the time he was about 5 years old till now, 22, he's lived in this 1,950 square foot house in the old gravel pit here in Albuquerque. They put a bunch of homes, and we have this beautiful home that he's grown up in. He's known nothing else,
yes.
and privilege, but he's done like your daughter. My point was going to be, I'm sorry, my point was going to be is like your daughter. He has embraced so many programs, like you said. She's been involved in the Peace Corps. So they've lived this life of privilege, but I also think that hearing us talk and understanding who her 100-year-old grandmother is and the lens that she looks through back in North Carolina, she has this heart of service,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So recently, about a year ago, we took the whole family out to see my mother. As time goes on, she hadn't seen my daughter in a long time. We all went out there, and my daughter's married to a wonderful. My son-in-law is a wonderful guy. He's a wildlife biologist. He grew up here and all that kind of stuff. And he's an Anglo guy. So my mother asked, just in passing, she goes, "Well, is he white?" And I go, "Yes, mother, and it's okay." She didn't really have a problem with it. She just couldn't help but say it out loud
Yeah.
because my family have, in a black family, we have all the colors of the rainbow.
Mhm.
And that was just interesting. She just asked me in there. She never said anything out. She was fine with it, but it was something different.
I always enjoy our time together, and I want to I appreciate you being gracious and allowing me to go overtime actually with you. I wanted to, we spent almost a full hour together visiting.
Okay. Okay.
I'm always happy when I'm with you, and I know we'll get to spend some more time in the years ahead. But let me just ask if there's any insight you could provide. Look, we've had people stay on with us all morning for the hour. You've had some great comments here. I hope you'll be able to go back and read some of these beautiful comments. People are trying to figure out what our rap name should be, and you got I think it was Kathy McGill who wants to come up with our rap names. We'll see what people suggest out there.
Yeah.
But is there anything, during this time of growth, during this time of maybe enlightening for so many of us, as we try to become better allies and try to better understand what has been a journey of hundreds of years of systemic oppression and marginalization of the Black community? Is there anything that you would say that would help us as we process as what it is to be a better ally, and as we look to you, because so many of us would look at you and go, and not me, I hope, but so many we've talked about on this show about, you're one of the good ones, and that is so demeaning to Black women and men, but it's also an honest comment in terms of people's perspective.
And I'm okay with people expressing what they really feel. We can discuss it. And I've got all kinds of mentors and people that I talk to about business and things, and that's what is helpful. Find someone that you can talk to when you're Black. I talk to Greg Zanetti. We talk about business. I talk to a favorite guy of mine, an entrepreneur around town, Jimmy Dasclos. We have all this kinds of discussions, and he's a great friend. And when you have these people that are clearly comfortable talking to someone in the African American community, and that's really helpful. So it's a two-way street. I would tell young African Americans or Hispanic for that matter, try to find a mentor. Try to find a few of them if you can, and conversely, be a mentor. I give it to guys straight. Guys always ask me about the cybersecurity business because it's a hot ticket. They said, "Well, should I get the certifications or should I get the degrees?" I'll tell you what I did. I did both. You get all the certifications and get your master's degree. So that should fill in all the blanks if you do it that way. But it's a two-way street. You got to avail yourself of those tough conversations. Have those tough conversations. Work through the fear, the anxieties, and tensions, and all those sort of things. And it's about habits. I think I saw something the other day, and it says how hard habits are to break. Just I'll tell the audience, try this: stick your hands out and fold and cross your arms. Now stick your hands out and try to cross them the other way, and you'll see how difficult it is to do that simple task. When it comes to rearranging your mental process, it's going to take some time. So you'll need guidance. So if you want to know more about Black people, you're not going to get that from talking to all your white friends, even if they're all PhD professors.
Oh my goodness, that is heavy. What you just said, that's bringing it home. If you want to understand and know about the lived experience of Black people, no matter how many educated and highfalutin white people you talk to, you're never going to know about it. You got to talk to a Black man. You got to talk to a Black woman about their experience.
Yeah, you got to do that.
Which is why these cafecitos are so important, and was why I cleared the deck and said we're only going to have Black voices on. We've been doing that now for a few weeks, and I know I'm a better man for it, and I do better. I can be a better listener and a better ally because of people like you making it safe for me to be candid with you. And mentorship is a two-way street. We talk a lot. Where I talk a lot when I mentor these young people, I say, look, you got to have a personal board of directors. And that is, get your half a dozen or 10 people that are absolutely going to be all in for your success. Just like if they're running a Fortune 500 company, they have fiduciary duty. They have a heart invested in your personal success. Now, part of that means is you have to work to make sure that personal board of directors brings you a varied experience and expertise, which means they have to have different lenses they look through, which also means they got to bring the cultural competency to the table if they're going to help you be the best version of yourself. that you were created to be.
Absolutely.
So you have to have that personal board of directors be that rainbow that Raphael talked about.
Yeah. One last thing, Brian. So I'm learning this from my friend Jack. I have to plug the company,
Yes.
but the thing I want to plug is Spartan Cybersecurity. If you have a cybersecurity question, you can call me. I have a website. You can call me. And I talk to lots of people. And since I'm semi-retired from the government, you don't have to put a quarter in the slot every time you want to talk to me. And if you're worried about cyber snake oil and things like that, I will help you.
That's
Call
awesome.
me. Get on the website, Spartan Cybersecurity. It's just Google Spartan. You'll find me, or Harmonics. I think I'm linked from their website with Jack, and we offer a complete solution from your wildest fears to things that are just not real, and we'll let you know the things that aren't real.
So what I did is I put up your email address here in the comments section.
Okay.
Raphael Warren, President and CEO of Spartan Cybersecurity, and I put up rwarren at spartan-cs.com.
That's correct.
Is there a good? What's the best number for people to call BG Warren?
Let me find it here.
Oh my goodness, you're killing me, and I'm sorry that I didn't pull your. I will just tell you on your little fact sheet, we don't have a phone number on that beautiful little PDF you sent me.
Well, I will tell you, I got overrun by phone calls, and I'm going to give you the one that you can definitely get to talk to someone.
Okay.
And let me tell you, I'm proud of this company.
Breezy Bree put up the homepage. Thank you, Bree. Love you. What's the best phone number? Bree will put up the phone number for us. Don't worry about that.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Final thoughts other than people can call.
Here's the phone number. Here's the phone number.
Putting a quarter in the slot machine.
Here's the phone number.
Payphone.
It's 505.
Yep.
639 3883. That is a local answering service with humans. They get to English or Spanish. They're wonderful. I'll put that information up. I've used them, and they're just as cheap as a machine, and I love them. You can call them, you can talk to a human. I love those guys, and they're a little shop.
And those humans will connect them with the very distinguished Brigadier General Raphael Warren.
I will get an email, and I will get, I get questions from industrial questions down to some person who thinks their spouse is doing some cybersecurity operation against them. I said, well, I'm not in that business, but if I were you, these are the kind of things I do.
Here's what I put up. I put call 505-639-3883, and you can talk to a human and connect with BG Warren. No quarter required.
No quarter required. And yep. Software, anything like that. And then if I can't answer it, Bree and Jack over at Harmonics can definitely answer your question, and we'll get you fixed up.
Excellent. And Bree also put up the number to Harmonics, which is 205-1585. And we appreciate you, General. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your leadership. And thank you for being in that rare air space where our young men of color in New Mexico and our young women of color can look up to people like you, can look up to people like Bree and see a reflection of themselves and be inspired and know that they too can find a path to enjoy that rare airspace of privilege that you talked about for you and your family. Thanks.
It is my pleasure. Thank you, Brian.
You bet. Make it a beautiful day. So, folks, we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow on Cafecito con Colon. Thank you to the General for going to 10:16 with me here on this beautiful Monday morning. We'll see you mañana. Make it a great day. God bless. Love you.